My name is Riley Voss. I'm 36, and until that glittering December night, I was still the unpaid treasurer who actually kept the Whispering Oaks HOA running in our picture-perfect Michigan suburb. The annual holiday gala was happening in the brand-new community center we all paid for with our monthly dues, crystal chandeliers swinging overhead, champagne towers bubbling, 200 homeowners in black tie pretending this was just another wholesome celebration of community values. Everyone smiling like we weren't living under the iron fist of Barbara Barb Kensington, our HOA president and the neighborhood's resident Karen Supreme. You know the type. Barb wore pastel cardigans and pearls like armor, always ready with a clipboard and that honey-dripping voice that could fine you for having Christmas lights one shade too warm while lecturing about protecting property values. The rules were endless. Grass no taller than 3 inches. Mailboxes aligned to the millimeter. No political signs bigger than a postage stamp. Break one and Barb's enforcement committee, aka her book club friends, would descend like pastel locusts. But here's the joke that always made me laugh through clenched teeth. The same woman who fined Mrs. Alvarez $250 for a non-approved garden gnome turned a blind eye when her own son Travis backed his lifted truck over the community welcome sign and left it in pieces. I learned early how things worked in Whispering Oaks. 5 years ago, Travis threw a raging kegger that blasted music until 4 a.m. Neighbors called the board in tears. Barb showed up the next morning in her golf cart, pearls gleaming, and looked straight at me, standing on my own porch in pajamas. Riley, sweetheart, how many times have we asked you to keep things quiet after 10? The HOA protects the HOA. I was 31. I hadn't even been home that night. I'd been at the hospital with my mom. But I took the $500 fine, smiled for the board minutes, and the whole street watched Travis get ice cream from Barb's freezer the same afternoon. Same script every time. When Travis accidentally installed a 10-foot privacy fence that blocked the shared walking path and violated 3 zoning codes, Barb called an emergency meeting. Riley, you're the numbers person. Surely you can see how this was just a misunderstanding. I rewrote the variance paperwork on my lunch break so the board could approve it retroactively. Travis got his fence. I got a thank you card that read, "Family. Board protects its own." I told myself it was fine. I was good with spreadsheets. I caught the landscaping company overbilling us by 30 grand a year before. I renegotiated the snow removal contract when the last company tried to double dip. Every quarter, I handed the board clean books and healthy reserves while Barb patted Travis on the back and cooed. See, this is why we need your vision. Baby, vision. That word became my personal trigger. Then, 3 years ago, Travis burst into the monthly board meeting waving glossy architectural renderings like they were the Declaration of Independence. The future of Whispering Oaks, he announced. He wanted to buy the abandoned Riverside Mill on the edge of town, $15 million cash from HOA reserves, and turn it into the first zero-carbon eco-community hub in the Midwest. Solar panels, green roofs, artisanal coffee bar, the works. Double our property values in 18 months. The room ate it up. Mrs. Alvarez clapped. Mr. Patel nodded like he hadn't just paid a $175 fine last month for his flagpole being 2 inches too tall. I ran the numbers that same night. The mill needed new roofs, asbestos abatement, new everything. Environmental cleanup alone would be another $4 million. Market studies showed eco-luxury amenities were already saturated and HOA dues were already maxed. I put together a 40-page deck with charts and red ink and walked into the next meeting ready to kill the deal. Barb listened to exactly 2 slides, closed my binder with a manicured hand, and gave me the same smile she used when Travis was 7 and wanted a pony. Riley, honey, you're thinking too small again. Travis has vision. The board agrees. Every seat at that table belonged to people who'd been friends with Barb since the subdivision broke ground. They voted yes before I finished my third sentence. Construction started the next week. Money bled faster than Barb's Botox budget. 14 months later, we were $12 million over budget. The Eco Hub wasn't selling single memberships. Banks started calling in covenants. Suppliers put us on credit hold. Payroll for the maintenance crew almost bounced twice. That's when Barb invited me to a little family dinner at her McMansion. Just her husband Gerald, Travis lounging like a king, and me. They slid a personal guarantee across the Granite Island, another $20 million line of credit. They needed my signature because, as Barb put it in her softest voice, "You're the only one who really understands the finances. Sweetheart, if you believe in this board the way we believe in you, you'll sign. We're all in this together." I looked at the paper, then at Travis sipping bourbon like the world owed him a straw. I looked at Gerald, who wouldn't meet my eyes. For the first time in 36 years, I said no. The silence lasted 5 seconds, but felt like a funeral. Barb's face hardened like cheap foundation in humidity. "Fine. If you don't trust Travis's judgment, we'll manage without you." The next morning, an emergency board vote stripped me of signing authority and removed me from every committee. My key card still worked, but the financial software locked me out of everything except read-only reports. Travis sent a neighborhood-wide email announcing he was taking over day-to-day fiscal strategy until further notice. Nobody fought it. Conversations died when I walked the sidewalks. Even neighborhood Facebook group started tagging me as MS. Voss instead of Riley. I became a ghost in the HOA I had kept solvent for almost a decade. Late nights became my new normal. Harper Brooks, the only other board member who still answered my texts, started staying after everyone else left. We'd lock the community center, kill most of the lights, and work from the back conference room because my old office had been reassigned to Travis's vision team. 2 laptops, 4 monitors, endless coffee, and the quiet hum of the building after hours. We started with the obvious places: vendor payments, capital expenditures, the Riverside Mill ledger. At first, everything looked clean, too clean. Invoices matched purchase orders. Wire confirmations lined up. Depreciation schedules were textbook perfect. That was the first red flag. No organization bleeding this much money keeps books that's spotless unless someone is working overtime to hide the hemorrhage. Harper pulled the raw general ledger exports while I cross-referenced every large outgoing transfer against the board-approved budget. By the third week, we had a list of 37 payments totaling almost $9 million that never hit the Riverside site. They went to 6 different limited liability companies none of us had ever heard of. We dug deeper. 4 of the LLCs were registered to cousins on Barb's side. 1 to Gerald's old golf buddy. Another to the cleaning lady who'd worked at the Kensington house for 20 years. Addresses were post office boxes or vacant lots. Bank accounts opened the same week the mill purchase closed. Money went in, sat for 30 to 60 days, then moved again, smaller chunks to offshore entities. Trust accounts, places we couldn't follow without subpoenas. I knew we were on to something real, but we needed the smoking gun. Barb had always kept an old-fashioned safe in her home office for important board documents. She changed the combination every year on her birthday and bragged that only she and Gerald knew the code. I'd watched her spin the dial once when I was dropping off financials at age 12 and never forgot the sequence. One Thursday at 2 a.m., the cleaning crew was gone and security was doing rounds on the other side of the property. Harper kept watch at the door while I opened the safe. Inside were deed stock certificates, a revolver I prayed was never used, and a single black USB drive labeled Backup 2021 to 2024 in Gerald's handwriting. I plugged it in with my heart hammering so loud I was sure the night guard would hear. The drive held mirror copies of the real general ledger, the one never shown to auditors or banks. Every fake invoice, every transfer to the shell companies, Every withdrawal labeled consulting fees or marketing advance was there in perfect detail. Over the last 3 years, more than $14 million have been quietly siphoned out of HOA reserves and into accounts controlled by Barb's family and close friends. Harper stared at the screen and whispered the only thing either of us could say. They've been stealing from their own neighbors to cover Travis's disaster. I copied everything onto 2 encrypted drives, put the original back exactly as I found it, and closed the safe. We shut the lights, walked out past the empty reception desk, and didn't speak again until we were in the parking lot sitting in our separate cars. I had the proof in my pocket. Now I just had to decide what to do with it. I scheduled the meeting for Sunday. I texted Barb and Gerald separately, told them it was urgent and only the 3 of us. They agreed to meet at their house at 4 in the afternoon, probably thinking I was finally ready to apologize and sign whatever they put in front of me. I arrived on time, walked through the same front door I'd used since I bought my first townhouse, and found them already waiting in the living room. Barb sat on the leather sofa with her arms crossed. Gerald stood by the fireplace, drink in hand, even though it was barely past lunch. I didn't sit. I placed a plain manila folder on the coffee table between us and stayed standing. I'm not here to fight, I started. I'm here because I still want to save this neighborhood and save all of us. I have every transfer, every shell company, every fake invoice from the last 3 years. 14 million moved out of HOA dues into private accounts. If the banks or the state attorney general ever run a real audit, we don't just lose the community center. We lose everything, including our freedom. I opened the folder and spread printouts across the table, pages of ledger entries, bank wires, incorporation documents for the LLCs. I watched their faces as the numbers sank in. Barb spoke first, voice low and sharp. How dare you go through our private office? I dare because someone had to. I answered. This stops now. We come clean to the full board. We bring the money back. We restructure the debt honestly. There's still a way out if we act today. Gerald set his glass down hard enough to rattle the coaster. You think you can threaten us in our own home? It's not a threat. It's the truth. I'm giving you the chance to fix this before I'm forced to fix it for you. Barb stood up slowly, eyes narrowed the way they used to when I was 8, and tracked mud across her white carpet at a block party. You have always been jealous of Travis. Always. And now you're willing to destroy everything we built just to prove you were right. I'm trying to keep us out of state prison. She laughed once, cold and short. Listen to me very carefully. Riley, you're not the hero here. You are the traitor. The board protects the board. You just proved you never understood what that means. Gerald stepped forward, face red. From this moment on, you're no longer part of this neighborhood family. Don't come to the house. Don't call. Don't show up at the gala next month acting like you belong. You're done. I looked at Barb waiting for something, anything that showed even a flicker of doubt. There was nothing. Her expression was pure ice. I closed the empty folder, slipped it back into my bag, and walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when Gerald spoke again, quieter this time. Hand over whatever copies you made. Riley, last chance. I didn't turn around. No, I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and stood on the porch for a long moment, breathing cold Michigan air. The house I had helped keep financially afloat suddenly felt like a building I had never entered before. I got in my car and drove away without looking back. December rolled in fast. The holiday gala was the biggest event Whispering Oaks had ever thrown. They rented the entire new community center, flew in a string quartet from Chicago, hired ice sculptures, the works. Invitations went out to every homeowner, every bank officer who held our loans, every supplier still brave enough to work with us. We still owed money to half the vendors who hadn't yet put us on stop. Barb wanted the night to feel like a victory lap. I wasn't planning to attend. Then the invitation arrived at my townhouse with a handwritten note from Barb. Board shows up. I knew what it really meant. Sit quietly. Smile for the cameras. Pretend everything was fine. I showed up in the same black dress I wore to Gerald's 60th birthday. Hair pulled back. No jewelry. Security waved me through because my name was still on the list, barely. I slipped past the main hall, where Travis was already holding court near the bar, and found the small VIP lounge tucked behind the stage. Empty. Quiet. Perfect. I set my laptop on the side table. Opened the email I had drafted weeks earlier. Subject line blank. Recipient list. Every single homeowner. Every institutional lender. Every loan officer. And the Michigan Attorney General's Fraud Division in Detroit. Attachments. The full backup ledger from Barb's Drive. Bank records. Corporation papers for every shell company. And a timeline Harper and I built showing exactly when the money left and where it landed. 5 minutes earlier from my phone in the parking lot, I had already sent an identical package to the state prosecutor I found through a college friend. One click now, and the circle would close. Out in the main hall, the lights dimmed, and the MC introduced Barb. Applause rolled like thunder. I could hear her voice through the thin wall. Smooth and confident. The same tone she used when she sold the Riverside disaster to the board. Tonight isn't just about celebrating another record year, she said. It's about the future. And tonight, Gerald and I are making it official. 100% of controlling board authority is transferring to Travis. Whispering Oak stays in Kensington hands exactly where it belongs. More applause. Louder this time. Glasses clinking. Someone started chanting Travis's name like he was a rock star. I hovered the cursor over Send All. I thought about the young homeowner who took the blame for the broken welcome sign. About the woman who lost her board privileges for a truck accident she never caused. About the neighbor who spent 8 years keeping this HOA breathing while everyone else looked the other way. I clicked. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. Then the first phone buzzed. Then another. Within 10 seconds, the sound was everywhere. Hundreds of notification chimes overlapping until it sounded like heavy rain on a metal roof. Conversations died. Heads dropped to screens. Someone near the front gasped loud enough to carry over the microphone. Travis was still smiling on stage, waiting for the next wave of applause that never came. I watched through the cracked door as Mr. Patel, our largest outside lender representative, read whatever had just landed in his inbox. His face went white. He looked straight across the room toward Barb and Gerald, then turned and walked out without a word. Travis finally noticed the silence. "Everything okay out there?" he asked, half laughing. Nobody answered. The collapse was faster than anyone expected. Mr. Patel didn't just walk out. He stopped in the middle of the hall, turned to face the head table where Barb and Gerald sat smiling for the photographers, and spoke loud enough for 3 rows to hear. Effective immediately. Regional Credit Union is exercising all termination rights and accelerating every outstanding HOA loan. Then he left. Phones kept buzzing. 2 landscaping companies texted their account managers on the spot to suspend service until further notice. By the time Travis stepped off the stage, the main bank we owed the most had already received automated fraud alerts from the Attorney General's filing. Their risk department triggered covenant clauses buried in the loan agreements. At 9:17 p.m., every HOA account was frozen. Payroll, vendor payments, credit lines, gone in 12 minutes. The catering staff discovered their final check bounced while they were still loading vans. The string quartet packed up without finishing their set. Security asked Barb and Gerald to leave their own event before dessert was served. 18 months later, the Chapter 11 filing for the HOA was a formality. The Riverside Mill went to public auction for pennies on the dollar. The community center was seized and sold to a logistics firm out of Ohio. Barb and Gerald lost the McMansion to foreclosure. The same bank took it the week the divorce was finalized. They split what little cash remained after the clawback orders and haven't spoken since the judge signed the papers. Travis's resume now carries a permanent stain. Executive at an HOA that imploded under documented financial misconduct. No private equity firm. No property management company. No startup will touch him. Last I heard, he was driving for a rideshare app in Florida, using a different last name on the profile. I moved to Seattle 3 weeks after the Gala. I rented a one-bedroom overlooking Puget Sound, hung my CPA license on the wall, and opened Voss Forensic Consulting, a boutique practice helping other HOAs clean up their books. Harper and I are the only 2 employees. We turn away more clients than we take. I sleep 8 hours a night for the first time in a decade. I have not received a single call, text, or email from Barbara, Gerald, or Travis since the night I walked out of that house. I will not receive one. I changed my number the day I signed the lease in Seattle. Any inheritance, any trust, any safety net they might have left, I never asked and never will. Some neighborhoods don't collapse because of outsiders. They collapse the second the scapegoat stops carrying the weight. If you've ever been the one holding everything together while the Karen in charge and her golden child pretended the cracks weren't there, I want you to know you're allowed to put it down. You're allowed to walk away. You don't know the people who never saw you anything, not loyalty, not forgiveness, not one more minute of your life. The night I clicked send, I didn't feel rage. I felt the quiet click of a lock finally turning. For years I had laughed through the fines, the blame, the passive-aggressive board emails that always ended with "we're all in this together." I had watched Barb lecture about community standards while wiring HOA money to her cousin's shell company for a consulting fee that bought her a new golf cart. I had smiled while Travis called the Eco Hub his legacy project, and the rest of us paid the tab. The satire writes itself, doesn't it? The same woman who once fined a veteran for flying an American flag 2 inches too close to the garage now stands in front of 200 neighbors with her empire of lies crumbling in real time. Phones lighting up like fireworks. Ice sculptures melting faster than Barb's fake smile. The string quartet packing up while the catering staff realizes their checks bounced. Classic Karen karma, served with a side of frozen bank accounts. Neighbors who once avoided my eyes in the street started messaging me weeks later. I never knew. Thank you. One even mailed me a garden gnome, the exact one Barb had fined Mrs. Alvarez for, as a thank you gift. Dark humor at its finest. The neighborhood that once bowed to pastel tyranny now sends contraband lawn decor in solidarity. Travis tried one last power move on social media, posting a tearful video about family betrayal and jealous neighbors. The comments roasted him alive. Vision looks a lot like theft. Bro, how's the Uber life treating you? Even his own cousins who received the shell company wires started distancing themselves publicly. The board that once protected its own turned on itself faster than you can say Attorney General subpoena. I still get tagged in HOA horror stories online. People ask how I stayed calm long enough to gather the proof. The answer is simple. I stopped believing the lie that the board was family. Families don't embezzle from their own children's playground funds. Families don't smear the only person keeping the lights on. I just stopped carrying their weight the moment I realized I was never part of their club. I was the janitor they kept around to clean up the mess. So if you're watching this from a subdivision ruled by your own local Karen, if your dues keep disappearing into visionary projects that somehow only benefit one family, remember Riley's story. Gather your evidence quietly. Wait for the moment the spotlight is brightest. Then hit send. The collapse is glorious. The silence after the buzzing phones is even better. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If this HOA drama hit close to home, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you know someone still carrying a neighborhood that refuses to carry them back, share this with them. Sometimes hearing the truth from a stranger is the only way we finally believe it's okay to let go.